Alright, we got a pretty good one today. So, going to be doing front brakes and rear brakes, pads and rotors, as well as hardware, brake sensors, and lubricating slide pins. So, my camera has about 30 minutes in POV recording time straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the front side. I'm going to show the front side with the brake wear sensor, and then I'm going to show the rear side with the brake wear sensor. Maybe if possible I'll mount the camera somewhere and show the other side that I don't do point of view. But I do want to make sure I get, at least one front and at least one rear recorded, so that you can kind of see how to do it, as it's the same thing on both sides. So one thing I kind of recommend having, especially if you're like this one and you are very rusty. So this is a subframe bolt, just an M14. It's really long, and this is a ball joint nut for a car on a Mercedes. Doesn't necessarily matter, but you definitely want a nice hard bolt and a nut for the sake of forcing a rotor off if it's stuck. More or less, it's just a tip or trick that I use. Don't need it. Hammers usually work fine after beating profusely for a long time, but this saves a lot of energy. I'm going to go ahead and get everything I need and then continue recording after that. Alright, I think I got all the tools I need. Might have missed one or two, but for the most part, this is what I would use for these brake jobs. I have a 1/2 inch drive torque wrench, 1/2 inch drive breaker bar, 3/8 drive ratchet, 3/8 torque wrench. And then I also have a small pry bar and a small screwdriver, or a big screwdriver, sorry, for compressing the brakes. And then you have a 6mm hex for the caliper bolts, T30 for the rotor bolts, these. And then I use a snap-on 1/2 inch drive wobbly with a 21 to get the caliper brackets off. And then I have my 1/2 inch Milwaukee impact to use for that. I have this only for if I need to force the rotor off. I usually use this guy because it hits pretty hard and it fits in the space to be able to shove a rotor off with this method. And then my 3/8 ratchet electric. I use this instead of this. I more or less just showed this if you don't have power tools. So I'm going to start with the front. Go ahead and get over there to do that. Also, optionally, caliper hooks. I don't use them. I'll show you where I shove the caliper to keep it from stretching the brake line and stuff like that. Also optional is a brake piston compressor. I have two types here. This one's more like a caulking gun. I personally prefer this one over that one. It's just a lot smoother. But again, I don't use them unless I absolutely need to. I'll keep them handy just in case. So get all my tools. I'll also be sharing all the torque specs for front and rear brake calipers and caliper brackets. I almost forgot to mention, you'll need some sort of method to extract brake fluid from your reservoir. These brakes are really worn. Let's show you here. There's not much brake pad there, so those pistons are going to compress quite a ways. And if your brake fluid is pretty full, like this one, you're not going to want that much in there. Otherwise, once you start compressing those pistons, you're going to have brake fluid overflowing out of your reservoir, which gets pretty messy and annoying. So this fluid extractor I always use just for brake fluid. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a bunch out. Down to the minimum almost. That's a ton of brake fluid, but like I said, these brakes are pretty well worn, and I'm going to be shoving a lot of brake fluid back. So at the end of this, I'll go ahead and show if I need to add any or even remove some more. I'll leave those for now. So first thing, I already checked to see which brake wear sensor went where. In my case, the green one in the front, which is longer, and then the red one is shorter for the rear. I'll show you here. Just a little bit shorter, but it makes a difference, so make sure you get the right one. And then I always just unplug those with either this pair that I keep on my cart, or my snap-on pair there. Disconnect that first usually, so pop that out. So start with the 6mm hex. I'm just gonna pull this cover off and this cover off. There's variations. There's not much change between a 906 and a 907, so this should cover both models. Most of the torque specs are also about the same, so as long as you get them all tightened relatively the same, or even comment down below, and if need be, I could look up a torque spec for your vehicle. So I just got those broke loose, but I kind of am skipping ahead a little here. My method for compressing the... Dang, that's brutal. Okay. My method for compressing the pistons in is this flathead screwdriver. So let's see. You can see, hopefully, right there where the brake wear sensor would go on that pad, but it's obviously on the outside. If you get your screwdriver in behind that pad, you can just work the piston closed. You can even make it easier. Here, let's make it easier on us. We'll just rotate this all the way. That'll give us better lighting. Go ahead and get in there with the screwdriver. Just keep pushing it till it's all the way in. Obviously don't do this method if you're just undoing your brakes to do something else that doesn't involve replacing the pads, because you'll ruin the brake pad. So just for fun, let's go see how much brake fluid from just one corner we have up here. Yeah, so we went from just above minimum to right in the middle of the reservoir. So we're probably going to end up having to pull more fluid by the fourth one. Now go ahead and get these out. The bottom one is the bolt that can come out, kind of keep it clean, not crucial. This top one is a slide pin with a bolt. I like to just break it loose like that, and then kind of give it a wiggle to break this free from the caliper bracket. Looks like that didn't come out quite all the way. Or it did, it's just being stubborn. Alright, so you could use a caliper hook. I've typically just set it here before. But I just found it to be not quite as easy, so it's fine like that. For me personally, I don't use the caliper hooks. I just make sure that I get this tucked up here nicely to where it doesn't fall down. It's not going to go anywhere right there. Don't want to let it dangle and stretch. You can mess up your brake line that way. Take a look at these brake pads. There's not much left there. Compare it with brand new ones real quick. Much different in thickness. So he was right at the end of his life on those brake pads. And a lot of corrosion. This style wheel tends to cause a ton of corrosion on your brakes because you can't really pressure wash things out, especially winter time. So if you do have a full faced wheel, I do recommend pressure washing from the inside out at least, quite frequently. That'll help cut down on rust and premature wear of your brakes and stuff like that. Now this is where the 21mm comes in handy, and my wobbly. You don't need a wobbly when you have it like this. An extension would be nice, so I'll grab one of those for this case. We usually get one broke loose, then go up and remove the first one. If you get one all the way out and then you go to break the other one loose, sometimes it can swing this up and maybe hurt you. So get one broke loose, go to the next one, you can remove that one, then remove the other. These don't get reused. You should get new ones every time you buy brakes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just watch that brake when rotating this back. So I can get this caliper bolt. Also, I break these things all the time. So if you don't have a spare, I don't necessarily recommend using an impact. Get these out. Oh, is it coming out? Okay. Yeah, I shatter these all the time. So be extra careful with those and try not to round them out because then you have to drill it out and that really sucks. So you can beat the crap out of these to get them off. It's a lot messier. Or this is where my method comes in handy and I like it. The reason why I like it. So take this, you know what, let's rotate this back just for this. Okay. So I'll take that bolt and then that. Get it fed through, and then grab the ratchet, preferably a reversible one, so you don't get this stuck in there. The bolt pushes right on the rotor. It's even good to hit this thing with a running start, so I could run this out a little bit. And grab this. Go ahead and put a bolt on there just to prevent that from falling off all the way. We can rotate. I've had better examples of how well that works, but you know, you get the idea. I didn't have to bang a hammer and I got it off, so really nice method for getting the rotor off. And at this point I like to clean off the hub here. I also want a wire brush just to clean off the slide. They're called spreader springs if you ever need to replace these. Mercedes calls these spreader springs. So that one works. And this is just what I use for speed. Use any wire brush on this part or none at all. Safety glasses are also a good idea. Clean that up. That'll make it nice for the wheel going back on too. Alright, now that we got that cleaned off, grab our new rotor, brake pads, 2 bolts, wear sensor, and brake grease. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean these out. The only time I ever have to replace these things is if one gets bent or lost. They usually last forever. Alright, that cleaned up. Grab the new rotor. I have a little bit of OCD, so I like to make sure it's like perfectly centered. Okay, new rotor's in place. Now we can get the bracket back on with our new bolts. So what I'll usually do is hit this on my impact at like number 2, being middle. kind of hard to mess this part up, but not impossible. It's the torque wrench. If you look here, torque spec for the brake caliper support to steering knuckle, 172 Newton meters. I've already gone ahead and got this set to that. As you can see, it wasn't much more than what my gun put it on at. That's 188, so a little over, but again, it's pretty hard to mess that up. Go ahead, grab your new brake pad wear sensor. Goes on the outside pad like this. Make sure you angle it forward or outwards like that. And then I'm going to show you this side since it's better lit, but just kind of line up right there and right here at the same time. Push it in, and that will open the spreader springs, which is where that term comes from. And then just shove it in like that. Now that's in position. Go ahead and grab your caliper. See how well greased those are? They don't need more grease. If they were a little bit more dry than that, I'd be a little more concerned. But since Mercedes is pretty good about sealing these, like with these caps, they usually don't have any issues. If it is looking a little dry, go ahead and give it some grease, like this. But now, so take your brake wear sensor right through this hole there. You'll have to push this back like so. Gently, try not to rip it, because then you take away from that sealing we were just talking about. I kind of just push in on the slide pin there. That gets it in position. And then same thing under here, just kind of push that back like so. And then you can go ahead, make sure you don't damage that new sensor. Grab your 6mm. I like to just get it started. So just barely touching there. Kind of see it suck in right there. So now I already checked the torque spec on this one, and it is 34 Newton meters. So I set this to it already, yeah, 34. Go ahead and torque both of those to that specification. It's not super tight, so don't break these. Just like that. Now this side is basically done. To make this easier to slide in, I like to take a little bit of this silicone spray, just wet that seal. It's just pure silicone hinge lubricant. That makes it to where it slides into this without rolling the seal back. Just like so. And there's the driver front, or passenger front. Really quick, I did almost forget to mention, I wouldn't have forgot, but to put these back on. They are quite important to protecting the slide hardware, or slide pins and stuff. So just make sure that seal doesn't roll, make sure it's popped on there right. So just repeat the same thing on the passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and let the camera charge while I do that other side so that I can then record the back for you. As you can see here, I'm going to try out a time lapse. I got my 360 camera right here, just aiming at this side. So we'll see how that turns out and if it's worth editing. Alright, got both the fronts done. I did watch a little bit of my last recording, noticed my camera angle's up just a little bit too high, so I turned it down just a little. Hopefully that helps with being able to see when I'm working down here more than, you know, up there. Still learning all this stuff, but got my light mounted. Actually works out pretty good right there. Should be able to light things up pretty good for you. Same thing on the back as the front, basically. Pull these caps off, 6 millimeters. 906s, it's usually a 13 millimeter instead of the 6, a 13 millimeter socket instead of the 6, so a little bit different, but essentially the same concept. So go ahead and undo your brake wear sensor. Same thing. Get in here. Let's see. Let's get a better light there. Yeah, same thing. Get in the rear pad there. Let's start shoving that piston back. Let's go double check the brake fluid level, see if we need to extract some. Probably. We'll check it after this one and see where we're at. That pad is crumbling. Holy cow. Gross. Alright, let's go here and check the brake fluid level, see if there's enough space in there for both rears, or if we should just pull some now. Honestly, I think we'll be right at the maximum once we compress that final corner over there, so not worried about it. Shouldn't have any issues with overflow. 6 millimeter. You can see they kind of bind up just a little bit right there. Give it some wiggles. And then I usually have enough room like that to just kind of set the caliper up there. Make sure it doesn't fall, but this one is much lighter, so if it did, the chances of an issue pretty minimal, but you could break that brake wear sensor wire harness. So just be careful. Breaking things sets things back quite a bit. Let's get a good look at this brake pad here. Oh my gosh. That was still working somehow. Holy crap. Yuck. It was like fully delaminating. So caught these brakes at the right time. A little bit more limited space here, but should be able to squeeze in there with my wobbly. One thing with wobblies, if you work on things, you're aware, most likely, but if that comes off and spins, you might get nailed by a socket, so keep good pressure against it. Make sure you're not getting injured. Injuries also cause setbacks. So. Caliper bracket. Go ahead and remember, be extra careful. Also, yeah, just really make sure the socket's in there. So rounding these off really sucks. And I've done it plenty of times. Success. Ah. Well, this does have a manual parking brake, so I hope those brake shoes aren't terrible. They might be. Uh-oh. I didn't even think about quoting parking brake shoes. So something to consider if you don't have electric parking brakes. Parking brake shoes can also be in pretty rough shape by this point. So let's see if we can just gently shove it off with our bolt method here. Try not to damage those brake shoes. I might have to loosen the brake. Actually, I can do that now just to kind of show you, just in case you have to loosen the parking brake on yours. So hopefully you can see, but right inside there you see those little teeth. What you need to do is have a flathead screwdriver. I always forget which direction these turn, not gonna lie. But essentially, that little gear in there, you just have to turn it to loosen it. Hopefully. Okay, I can see it turning now. You'll know you're tightening it if you can no longer spin the brake. So you'd have to go the other direction. So far, I think we're going the right way. Doesn't seem to have any more give there. So let's see if it'll come off. Again, we're going to try to be extra nice to this to avoid any type of setbacks. Let's see. If we can get enough angle to not damage this dust shield, that'd be ideal. Should be good. It's close. Ooh. Oh, beautiful. Not too bad. Okay. So, looks like we got it loosened the right direction. That thing I was talking about. So, I was going through the lug hole, and I was turning it left here on the passenger side. So, to retighten it would be to go that direction. You can see right there, getting the gap. So, keep it a little loose. Let's go grab a new rotor. Pads and hardware. I had an extra green one, so you know. So, red one for the rear in this case. One of those. A set of these. We'll take this with us just in case. I don't know why I grabbed both rotors, but that's okay. I'll put one over there. Okay. New rotor. Skipping a step here. Don't forget this one. I don't like my nice tools being underneath, getting dirtier than they need to. This also has a fair amount of grease on it, so I'll tend to move it out of the way so it doesn't get a bunch of dirt on it. Go. Now we can get the rotor on. See that nice parking brake surface in there. Slides on nice and easy. there's that. One thing we can do is just make the adjustment to that parking brake until we feel some drag. So we already know going this way loosened it, so we can go to the right. So you can go all the way, it'll make you stop. Feeling some resistance there. I definitely can't spin that now. So we'll go back enough so we don't have too much drag. And then the parking brake will still have plenty of bite. Okay, that's good. So parking brake is adjusted on this one. Now we'll go ahead and clean off this caliper bracket. Maybe. Brakes are messy. Good luck doing this without getting dirty. If you don't like breathing in this brake dust stuff, maybe suggest wearing just a dust mask or something. You'll have black boogers after doing brakes on all four corners of a vehicle. The torque spec on this one is a little bit different. Come on. One thing you can also do to be sure you're not going to have like the wrong caliper bolt is make sure that if you put the flange of this bolt up against your caliper or your hub there, that it doesn't touch the rotor. I've actually seen it where the wrong bolt was put in and it just went right into the rotor. It was just barely touching, but it was enough to cause a concern. And come back and have to get fixed. Not on a Sprinter, it was on a car. So honestly, we can use this to get these back in. Nope, not quite. This is a pretty cool right angle impact. I really like it. Okay, so this torque spec is 80 Newton meters to start, and then an additional 45 degrees. So I don't have a torque wrench that'll do that kind of torque angle. Or like this would, pretty sure if I did 80 on this and then tried to do 45 degrees, it would exceed the capacity of my torque wrench. I've already done that before. Had to pay $75 to warranty it out and get another. So we'll go with our initial 80. I don't need the wobbly on there. And then we'll mark it for the 45. 80. Now, I'm going to do this with my big breaker bar just because it's got a good bit more leverage. Grab a Sharpie. So 45 is just half of 90. So if we go, so this would be 90, roughly. So if we take that to the middle of that, and it's roughly middle, it's not critical. So top 45, half of 45. So we'll get this mark to this mark. Oh, that's quite definitely would have exceeded my little 3/8. That's good there. Good there. So that's 80 Newton meters plus 45. got that torque to spec, as we like to say. Now we can go ahead and get our brake wear sensor, put in the new pad. Same thing as the other side, just kind of, I like to give it a little extra twist there. Same process, line up the bottom, line up the top, push it towards the axle, kind of like this. I might be able to show you better on this side. So, yeah, shoving it in that way a little bit, and just rocking it back. So, there's the new pads. Kind of see that you got limited length here because I didn't undo this. So just kind of like line up that hole, swing it over, don't pinch your brake wear sensor. Go ahead and get this rubber boot lined up. Again, try not to pinch that, you'll mess up the sealing ability of the cap and boot and cause potential premature brake seizing, which would cause uneven brake pad wear. Handful of problems you just rather avoid. So, cautious, take your time. Try not to round out these bolts. I don't know why. So, just a touch. The torque spec on this is the same at 34. I checked that already. So we'll go to our memory. 34. It's not tight at all. Not super tight. It is tight. Just don't go too crazy and break it. Perfect. Same thing. Wet this seal here. That's a bit much. Not gonna hurt it. Just like that. Not gonna forget these in the video this time. So, lower cap, upper cap. There you have it. Always check when you're doing your brakes to make sure you got good slide. You could even dry fit the caliper on there like this without the pads, and then just make sure that it slides back and forth like that. Usually you'll know it's not sliding back and forth when you go to like compress the piston and stuff like that, so you'll know. But yeah, just to keep an eye out. I've had these get seized quite a few times. It's quite the process. So just a heads up on that. If that piston seizes, it's kind of hard to finish the job and you gotta get creative. So I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. I'm just gonna grab my 360 camera, get it set up, kind of do a little time lapse of that side. And then I'll do a little final video once I'm done with everything. Alright, really quick, I do have the time lapse going here, but I really wanted to show this parking brake shoe adjustment, so you know which direction to turn it if you have to adjust it on yours. But can I first start with how bad these brake pads are? Like, honestly the worst ones I've seen yet, other than ones that are like completely gone, but this one was like almost there. I'm surprised this corner was even doing any braking. So, as far as the loosening and tightening of this goes, going that direction loosens the parking brake, and going back this direction will tighten it. You can kind of see that little gap there growing. Not very happy. Okay, just be careful with this. man. Corrosion is strong with this one. One thing to look out for. See that? It'll still function just fine, but I'm going to let this customer know that we should do brake shoes. We usually don't have those in stock, so he'll have to come back. I really wish I would have thought about it or noticed it or looked into it a little closer before even starting on the rear brakes. So if you have pretty good mileage and you suspect a fair amount of rust, just order the brake shoes, but they are quite a bit more difficult to replace. You have, springs and all sorts of stuff, which would be for another video. So who knows? Maybe this customer will approve parking brake shoes, and I will be doing a video on those as well. But always at the mercy of the customer, since these are always on their vehicles, and I don't personally own a Sprinter. So that's a quick rundown. Just wanted to show you that and kind of show you the brakes and stuff like that. So continue on with that time lapse. Alright, got all four corners done. Let's go ahead and check that brake fluid really quick. Perfect. We're just below max. No need to add or remove any fluid there. We could take it right up to the max fill level, but it's so minimal. It's not a big deal. I'm letting the customer know that I was unable to adjust this parking shoe. You might see in the time lapse that I sat here and tried to get that to tighten, and it just won't go past a certain point. So hopefully I can get him to come back. He's got a trip to go on, and then maybe I'll come back and get that taken care of. If not, again, it's not like crazy critical, especially because he's got that other side working flawlessly. This side will most likely grab just fine, but the shoe delaminating like it is where I worry a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all these wheels and tires put back on. Figure I don't need to show how to do that. That's pretty straightforward, or it could be a totally separate video for that aspect, but yeah. If you liked this video showing how to do the front and rear brakes on your Mercedes Sprinter, go ahead and give the video a like, subscribe to my channel, and comment any other suggestions or questions you have down below.